Hi and welcome. It's Jennifer Britton. I am your host of this month's virtual PlanDoTrack and Coaching Business Builder call. Today's topic is June the 16th, 2019, is 5 key virtual and remote skills. So whether you are a virtual solopreneur running your own show, or maybe you're a remote worker or a virtual team leader, I think today's call is going to be valuable for you. Pulling from 2 books, number 1, PlanDoTrack, as well as my 2016 book, Effective Virtual Conversations. So I'm Jennifer Britton, the author of both books. This is part of a monthly series of calls that I host for both books, and I do hope that you enjoy them. Find something very practical and tactical you can employ into your work immediately. So I'm pulling on some of the PlanDoTrack materials. The tagline of this body of work is that daily steps plus consistent action equals momentum. In the virtual remote space, we want to be doing things, planning things, and tracking things regularly. That's why it's called Plan, Do, Track. We want to be doing this regularly to really see the momentum that we are creating. And within this, we do want to make sure that we are leaning into some skills that we know from research do work well. So I've been working in a remote and virtual space for the better part of almost 30 years now. It's hard to believe. In those early days, we were connected by long-range radio, think MASH radio headsets. I have been behind the desk managing teams across not only 1 country, but 10 countries. And in the last decade and a half of my work here at Potentials Realized, I've been working with virtual remote teams. I've been working with global leaders. I continue to support and run programming where every day is like this. In fact, I started my day, it's only 11, just after 11 here in Toronto, but I started my day about 6 hours ago. Early is great in my world. I've already hosted a couple of group calls where we did look like this, where we are connecting in, as you can see from the clock, connecting in different parts of the world, hearing from different people, wanting to create some engagement. Virtual remote teams are becoming so much more commonplace today, and certainly we want to make sure that we're leaning into best practices. As I wrote Effective Virtual Conversations back and published it in 2017, that was based on a decade plus of work that I've been doing in the global sphere. And we continue to see a resurgence, in fact, a growth of virtual remote work. We do not always see it well modeled. So that is the impetus behind today's topic, 5 core skills for virtual and remote teams. It could be a team, you could be a team of 1, you could be a team of 10. What's interesting is in the virtual remote space, we all need these skills. So I introduced Jo, who's a team leader in Effective Virtual Conversations. She's also joined by another, her name is Jane. And Jane is a virtual facilitator. Like myself, Jane spends most of her time online, and I thought it would just be fun to get you thinking about some of these core meta skills that are useful. Some of them are more characteristics rather than skills. I'm going to zoom into 5 additional skills, but think about some of these characteristics that really helps us succeed, and I would even assert flourish in the virtual space. Now, in the virtual space, anything is possible. And I think we do want to make sure that we have a blend of skills. They may not be seen as the most important skills for in-person, but things like being technically savvy, being able to work on your feet, having a breadth and depth of experience can actually work in our favor when we're working with global teams. We may be working in parts of the world, supporting people in parts of the world or in industries that we're not usually based in. So that breadth and width of experience can be really, really useful. So many of us today are spending our time online, but we're not always seeing it well modeled. So being able to build connection across a very diverse group is absolutely essential. It can help us to really be a good host, to really be able to welcome people, be a facilitator. A facilitator is someone who makes things easy. And you'll notice that in the wall, I have put this term of like great facilitators pass it to the group. Great facilitators make it owned by the group. We also want to make sure that we are optimistic, that we're not getting too stressed out in the work, because inevitably tech does happen. In fact, I had to start this call a second time because I realized as I got to this slide, I had forgot to set record. And that does happen. So we want to be comfortable. We want to be a good troubleshooter. We want to use intuition because we don't always see the people in front of us. And that also means that we need to be comfortable in not being able to see or to even understand or have experienced things. Real need for fluidity in this space. We also know from research that there are some core skills. So again, going back to effective virtual conversations, what this book is all about is becoming more effective in the virtual space. It does have a grounding, parts 1 and 2, all about the different types of conversations we have in the virtual space. I go into the ecosystem of the virtual learning, and today we can be involved in everything from MOOCs, massive open enrollment programs, through to virtual team meetings, through to virtual team development, coaching, mentoring, the whole range. Underpinning all of this are some key skills. And as I went to research this book several years ago, really was interested in hearing what are the skills that are key. Building relationships, building trust, creating connection amongst the team. Being a clear communicator is essential. And given that people may be joining a remote virtual team from across an industry, across a geography, across a culture, understanding how to bring people together and work across differences is critical. There's also an intentionality, and when I say intentionality, like what is the focus? How do I keep focused? How do I continue to innovate or be agile and resilient? And how do I also build my intercultural muscles? This whole arena of the intercultural space is really, for so many people, is new. As someone who has worked globally for the better part of 30 years, it's become the way that I have learned to work, being aware of my bias, understanding how I might need to adjust my style when I'm working with people from other parts of the world and even across industries or even different parts of, say, Canada or the US. So there are a lot of skills. I'm going to be zooming into some that are here and some that are not, because in recent months we've been looking at several of these. We've also been looking at areas like project and matrix management. Today, though, I want to really lean into like what's going to help you, because there are some differences in the virtual and remote space. And number one is the need for empowerment. You would have heard me say a few minutes ago that today's call is not about just leadership. Everyone really needs to lead in today's virtual space. Also, we do want to make sure that we are keeping things front and center. I like to use this phrase that out of sight does not equal out of mind. And in my work with virtual and remote teams, in the Teams 365 banner, it really is critical that we are making sure that out of sight does not equal out of mind. We want to create clarity on all levels, and that clarity can be because of different layers of culture. It can be just layers of understanding and context. Note that culture is multifaceted. We may have different geographic cultures. We may be part of different team cultures when we're working globally. I might have membership in 2, 3, or even 4 teams. So if I'm based here in the Toronto area, I'm probably part of the Toronto team. I may also be part of a technical team, maybe the learning department. That's another team that I'm part of. But I might also be tasked with a special global learning function, and so I'm part of a 3rd team. In working across Toronto team, learning team, and the global learning team, we might actually have evolved different types of culture. And so being clear, checking my assumptions, being as good at checking in and checking for understanding, these are all key things in terms of clarity. Another piece that's really important is making sure that I'm soliciting and giving feedback. And that is really critical, making sure that I'm on the mark. We have an assumption sometimes that what works here may work everywhere else. And so you'll notice even in the last few minutes, I've named and pointed to this real need for checking assumptions. Part of checking assumptions means bringing things above the waterline and making the implicit explicit, making sure that we are really making things more pronounced, making things not just verbally, but making sure that we are really naming assumptions, checking that we're all on the same table. So with all of this in mind, In order to work effectively today, it means that we want to be doing a couple of things. Number one, to empowerment, making sure everyone has the skills. So I hope that this is a session, a recording that you will point your team members to. This is why, PlanDoTrack is for the virtual and remote workspace. And it's not just for leaders. Everyone needs these skills. In effective virtual conversations, what I found fascinating, given that the book has been out for almost 2 years now, is just the number of organizations that are purchasing copies for everyone, not just their leaders, but they recognize that we really have shifted to a team-based environment as soon as we move to the virtual and remote workspace. So I'd like you to think about your work right now. Even before I get into 5 skills, I've mentioned quite a few areas. So going back to our matrix here, this comes from effective virtual conversations. Maybe there are some skills here, skills elsewhere. What do you want to focus on? What's going to help you get ahead in your work, particularly if you're in a virtual and remote workspace? Let us know. Well, I take you through in PlanDoTrack a couple of self-assessments. So as you flip to page number 1, I've taken a blend of the skills that I mentioned a few years ago, putting it in with what I'm hearing and continuing to hear in many different workplace contexts. And you're going to notice they're not the same skills, but there are some additional skills that we want to build. So again, right at the front of Coaching Business Builder, pages 8, 9, and 10, these are exercises that you'll want to work through. Self-assess on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you around holding difficult conversations? In the in-person realm, we have lots of opportunities to put difficult issues on the table. In the global and virtual and remote space, we may be very apt to sweep things under the carpet. Or we may be working with people who approach conflict in different ways than we do. So I'm Canadian by birth. I'm not always truly Canadian in terms of my approach to conflict, because here in Canada, we have a tendency to put things under the rug. I work a lot with Americans, and for Americans, it's more appropriate to put things on the table, sometimes even forcefully. So if I am part of a North American team, which also will include Mexico, how are we approaching conflict? How are we holding difficult conversations? These are skills that we may not always make explicit. To that point of making the implicit explicit, have we created ways of working for the ways we want to approach? So think about your skill base, and I hope that you'll take a few minutes as you pick up your own copy of PlanDoTrack to work through the 11 or 12 skills that I've listed there. Part of this is also getting a lot better at focusing. So I've included just a screenshot of the monthly daily tracker, which I've talked a lot about in terms of using to track things like marketing, finances, but you may be also noticing things like, how often am I having a difficult conversation? How often am I addressing conflict? The monthly daily tracker can have categories of any type that you would like. I would like you to really be noticing, where are you focusing? One of the first 5 skills that I want to mention today is the skill set of emotional intelligence. And as a newer leader in the early 1990s, I remember meeting emotional intelligence. And when I say meeting it, I remember going through one of my first training programs around emotional intelligence, thinking this is so fascinating. Emotional intelligence is a term that was coined by Daniel Goleman and a fellow set of researchers. A couple of different models that we have here. We also have the work of Salve. We want to make sure that emotional intelligence really is a set of competencies we can develop in people. It's often seen as the softer side of stuff, when in fact it really isn't the softer side of stuff. I've been privileged to train others in the area of emotional intelligence for the last decade plus, and really there are very compelling reasons why we would want to build skills like relationship building, influence, the ability to read others, the ability for us to self-manage our emotion. These are all things that go into emotional intelligence. And as research has shown, it helps us with team performance, improving decision-making, reducing stress, reducing turnover. In the remote space, being able to read others becomes a very critical skill. I need to do that from a lens of relationship, from a lens of understanding other people's context. But emotional intelligence can make a big difference between someone who thrives in the space of the remote from someone who is just surviving. And I think as research continues to come forward, I think, this is a think, not a no, I think that we will probably see that emotional intelligence also plays a key role in navigating success in the virtual and remote workspace. So going hand in hand, and in fact, emotional intelligence, and I'll do a call on this week a lot in the Teams 365 Leadership Lab. Emotional intelligence is all about different areas. It's about managing our emotions, knowing others' emotions. And part of that is bringing us back to relationship building. In the remote and virtual space, we are constantly getting to know people and navigate. Now, when we want to approach a conflict or a problem, it can be invaluable to have relationships to lean into. There's a lot of different conflict models. Many of them point to the need to adopt approaches depending on the strength of our relationship and the strength of the results that we need to aim for. So if I am if I'm managing a project and I need something to happen, I may choose to push for that something to happen if the result is more important than the relationship. So let's say I'm working with a colleague, her name is Anna. Anna's in Germany. Anna and I both need to get things done, but from my office's perspective, it's really critical we do get it done. Now, I know that Anna will probably accommodate, so I'm going to push for the result because I really want to make sure that that is critical. And while it's fine to push when relationships are not important, imagine, though, if Anna and I actually have to work together every day. If I'm constantly pushing and competing and wanting to make sure that I win, I'm going to burn that relationship. So I really would like you to think about relationship building, like who is in your network, how well do you know people, what do you know about the other person's style, and what approaches are necessary for us to take. Because flip side, going back to working with Anna in Germany, Anna might reach out to me and perhaps there's a new German initiative, which is really important for it to happen. And Anna approaches me and says, you know what, Jennifer, I think, in this instance, really important that I ask you to do X, Y, or Z. I can, of course, push back and think, no way. But if that relationship is important over time, I might choose to accommodate and accede in terms of like saying, okay, for this one, yeah, you've got it. I'll go out of my way to make this happen. And I know that now we're equal as partners. So relationship building is key. We want to make sure that we're going out of our way to know the people that we work with. And again, it's a challenge because we only see these little windows in people's worlds. So how do we approach that? Always a key issue. All right, another skill is, of course, a skill of influence. So notice I've gone from emotional intelligence to relationship building to influence. In fact, a lot of these are rolled into many emotional intelligence frameworks. But the skill of influence is our ability to work through others. That's the way I like to frame it. As a younger leader, 20, 25 years ago, the skill of influence was really important. As a younger leader, someone in their mid-20s managing staff, not always double my age, but sometimes double my age, the ability to really build strong relationships so that there was strong trust and there was a real empowerment of the team was a really critical part of my work. So in influence, we want to really make sure that we are working through others, helping connect in with their motivation, helping connect in with what's important to them, to make sure that we are able to influence an end result. And there's a whole body of research around influence. I think many, many times, and if you go to the Teams 365 blog, you'll find some writing around this. So we've got Keller's influence assessment. We also have other writing like Carrie Patterson's Influencer. This is a very interesting area. And again, I don't think we have a lot of models around influence, but it's absolutely essential because if I'm sitting here in Toronto, and again, I'm working with Anna in Germany, for us to work effectively, there are areas that I may need to influence with her, areas she may need to influence back with me. And so how are we doing that? How are we making sure that we influence in a positive way? And part of the skill of influence rests in a strong relationship, in strong trust, and the ability as well to be flexible and know what our end result is. So today, I'd like you to really be thinking about where are you with that skill of influence. This is not a skill set. None of these are skill sets that we're going to build in a 30-minute call. But you'll notice that I think there are some areas that start getting peaked up in terms of like, this is an area I want to do more learning around. I've included this on page number 11. And as I write in PlanDoTrack, given the variety of relationships we work through in the virtual space, the skill of influence is critical. Influence is about the impact or effect we have on the behaviors, thoughts, and opinions of others we are in relationship with. Given the variety of matrix relationships in the virtual space, we may not have formal leadership power over others and might need to use influence to impact results and outcomes. So question here in the book is, what does influence mean in your work context? What are the behaviors that create influence? And as you go through the dozen or so skills in PlanDoTrack, you're going to find a connection on with things like collaboration. So I haven't mentioned it. I wanted to zoom into 5 areas. Again, we've looked at emotional intelligence, relationship building, influence, building trust. So trust, I think, is at the heart of so much of this. And whether I'm working with teams, with leaders, with coaches, so many of our conversations return back to trust. How are we trusting each other? The more we trust each other, the more risk we can take. The more risk we can take, the more we can innovate. The more trust we have, the less concerning it can be to be operating in an era of disruption where change is happening. So I say this having always been very blessed with most of the teams that I worked with, high levels of trust. It allowed us to flourish. It allowed us to roll. There have been teams that I've been part of where trust was low, and it made it very challenging for us to not only get our work done, but do anything in the sphere of innovation. So trust means different things to different people, and part of the starting point of any remote or in-person team probably, and in my mind, it's a should be around trust. What can we do to not only get to know each other, but to trust each other? And like this photograph shows, we may be linking in with, topics around reliability, loyalty, respect, duty, sincerity, integrity. Are we walking our talk? Are we following through? Are we being respectful in the way we approach others, the things we ask of each other, and even the way we are cycling back into follow through? Reliability is key. So an invite for you to think about, how are you building trust right now? How are you building trust with your team? How are you building trust with others? What is happening and how is it working? Part of trust is also about communication. And as a 5th skill set, I want to get you thinking about communication, because in an era of low trust, little communication can be perceived in certain ways. So think about the communication you are having in your team and with stakeholders. What are the things that are going to be of value? Like, how are we communicating? Is it like direct? Is it through social media, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, even LinkedIn for many leaders today? Are we using internal team vehicles? Maybe there's a Slack, maybe there's instant messaging, maybe there's an intranet, maybe we have a mighty network keeping things along. Are there personal touch points? And again, as diverse as our conversation space becomes, it comes back to the basic. How are we having a conversation? And I think we're seeing a pendulum, right? When I wrote Effective Virtual Conversations 2.5 years ago, even then we didn't see the same pushback we're seeing today around Facebook. 2 years ago, Facebook was great. Today, Facebook might not be so great for everyone. I'm not singling out Facebook, but I'm saying any of these channels, we can have a pushback. Instagram, it's pretty. No, it's not. So we do want to make sure that we're looking at, how do we approach social media? How are we approaching different channels, whether it's a newsletter, which is something you own, whether it's blogging. Think about how you're communicating successes, learnings, achievements, and I did say learnings. So learnings are sometimes the things that are not working. In communication, we want to be thinking about what are those regular communication vehicles, instant messaging, Slack, email, phone, like how much is enough? What is too much? Like, are we picking up the phone and still talking with each other or seeing each other? And of course, if you have a copy of Effective Virtual Conversations, make sure that you're also getting into team meetings. To the notion of trust, trust gets eroded when people are not feeling like they're being heard. Trust gets eroded when meetings are not well facilitated. It's a little issue, but it can become a very big issue. So definitely check out Chapter 9 in Effective Virtual Conversations around essential meeting tips and even 8 questions you'll want to be looking at. You can also check out the Effective Virtual Conversation calls, which I've hosted now for 2 years. There's more than a couple dozen calls that you can tap into if this is an area of interest. Ultimately, habits are things created by what we do consistently. So I've talked today about 5 different skills working backwards. We've got communication, we've got building trust, we've got influence, relationship building, and also emotional intelligence. As you think about all of these areas, what are the things that you want to focus on? What would you like to be doing more of so that they become habitual? As a team leader, as a former team leader, it became habitual that I would always host certain events every quarter or year. It became habitual that we would have team meetings at a certain time, whether there was 1 or 10. And it was really interesting as the value of meetings paid off, people would go out of their way to make sure that they could connect. So that's not only instituting activities, but it's also making sure that people find them of great value. What are the habits you want to create and be focusing on as you go forward? Is it coaching? Is it reaching out to certain team members once a week to see how things are going? We've talked about a lot of different practices, from project management practices in recent months through to just self-assessment and individual touch points. Making it work, it's really critical if we are part of the team that we talk to the team, that we think about what is going to work, what is not working. As you can see here, everyone on the team might have a different perspective. What's important is that we come to a common ground, and common ground does not always mean that it's like equal. So just be thinking about how you're going to talk to the team and come up with some team practices. Now, one thing that's been running in the backdrop, I do the one biz step a day this month for June. It's all about niche. So if you're focusing on niche and you're a coach, this may be of interest. Same if you're a virtual facilitator. These are daily prompts to get you thinking about what are those 1 steps every day you want to undertake. And make sure that you are following the tracker. Again, today I suggested you might not be tracking revenue perhaps, but maybe you're tracking the number of conversations you're having. Maybe you're tracking the relationships you're going out and fostering or building or maintaining. So lots to be thinking about. For those that are interested, resources around today's topic, all in section 1, the different skills in PlanDoTrack. And those are virtual and remote skills. Now, if you're a coach, in Coaching Business Builders section 1, you'll see the ICF competencies. But if you're interested in the remote and virtual space, pick up a copy of PlanDoTrack. Down below, you've got Effective Virtual Conversations. You might also want to check out part 3. I've referenced a few chapters today from Meeting Management, Chapter 9, and all of Section 3. Part 3 is about virtual team leadership development. It's also about virtual team development, not leadership development, but team development, because as I said, the team is just as important. This week's topic digs us into some of the great content we've been exploring over at the Teams 365 Leadership Lab. That is an annual group I host all year. It's been meeting now for more than a year, and there's a whole slew of content that you can, as a leader, tap into. If you're interested in that, definitely reach out to me, info@potentialsrealized.com. As I mentioned, our next calls are coming up. We're not together for a few weeks, so enjoy the start of summer holidays. We're back together though on July 8th, creative summer projects. And then again, end of July, hot summer topics for PlanDoTrack. So I hope that you found this sort of breaking off of coaching versus PlanDoTrack, Coaching Business Builder versus PlanDoTrack. There's some calls that'll be of interest to everyone, some that may be of interest to some of you. Monthly tool, again, is another resource for you to tap into. If you're not completing this, make sure that you are looking at doing your month in focus. And I'm really excited to announce, if you have not heard, I'll be doing a facilitator training for people who are interested in taking PlanDoTrack and or Coaching Business Builder into their organizations and out with their clients. I really want you, I want to be able to create ripple effects. I hope that you'll take your skills deeper. And starting July 9th, 2019, I'll be doing 6 half-day sessions, 6 3-hour sessions of facilitator training online, live, so not online on demand, but online live training virtually around PlanDoTrack and Coaching Business Builder. You can certify in one or both or other. As we go to wrap up, think about what are the action steps you're going to undertake in the next 6 months. What would you hope you will have achieved? And what are your goals as it relates to today's topic, whether it's emotional intelligence, building trust, looking at relationship development. I hope that you'll take a moment to just note down your action plan. As always, more supports for you in the whole coaching ecosystem. We, of course, have ICF CCE approved programs, blended learning. If you're a virtual leader, join me for some Teams 365 leadership work. And definitely check out the Teams 365 blog over at potentialsrealized.com. Leave these up for you. Let's connect. Let's connect in a way that works for you. Do check out past calls at Effective Group Coach. And with that, I'll look forward to seeing you back here on July 8th. For the next couple of months, in a few weeks, I'm making the move north. You'll see a different background, a much more casual vibe. Hope that you will enjoy that and perhaps join me starting July 9th for the Facilitator Training Program. This program is only going to run twice a year, in the summer and the fall. I hope that it will be of interest to you. So let's connect, see if it's a good fit for you, especially if you want to be doing more work like this with your own clients. You can be taking the resources forward. I've got additional tools, exercises, worksheets for you to be deepening your work with others. All right, with that, enjoy. I look forward to staying in connection. Be well. Enjoy the end of spring. Take care, everyone.